Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my review for the fourth episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Just to get this intro out of the way, that way it's not long. I just want to let you all know that I'll be diving into the good, bad, mixed, and the criticism of the episode as usual. And I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody who subscribed and who actually watched the videos because it means a lot to me and I really appreciate it. So, now to get right into it. My overall thoughts on this episode was that it was very underwhelming and it was very disappointing. And I'll get on to the reasons why and some of the stupid things that I've seen in the episode. And the main thing is what really frustrates me about this episode or the series as a whole is the how do I say it? The bad writing, just straight up the bad writing in this episode and the series as a whole. And I'm gonna get right into that, not right now, but in the bad section of the review. But before I get into that, I'm just going to go over into the good aspects of this episode. And to me, there aren't really any good. They're more neat, or there's not really anything good that stands out. But I'll just highlight some of the things that I appreciated, I guess. The scene with Obi-Wan and Vader, their comparison while they're both in the back of the tank was neat. I thought it was a cool scene. Another scene is the overall Reva trying to get information out of Leia, which she fails at, and I thought that was good because, as we see in Episode 4, and as we know, that when Vader's trying to interrogate Leia in Episode 4, when she resists and he's not able to, break her, I guess. He's not able to get any information out of her. So, it would probably cause an issue for me if we know that Vader isn't able to, how powerful Vader is, but this low-level Inquisitor is able to, take information from Leia, or she's able to break Leia. But at the same time, as long as the writing's good, and if that was her ability that she specialized in, and that's what she's mainly known for, or she's, I guess, became an Inquisitor, or she's used for interrogation, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. It just has to be written well, which we know that the show has problems with. Another thing is Obi-Wan, I guess, getting back into the swing of things with his lightsaber, and you can tell that he's remembering some of the things that he learned. Of course, Surisu we saw him use, and Surisu and Xian, how he's deflecting the bolts back at his attackers and everything, and then classic Obi-Wan fighting style, as we know. Just not to see him get into the swing of things, which I think it's about time that he needs to start. I'll highlight this later too. Obi-Wan should have already been on his way to become, I would say, the more hopeful Obi-Wan or Ben Kenobi, as we know, in the original trilogy, because there's 6 episodes in total, as we know. The first 3 should have highlighted his depression and everything that goes along with that, but the latter 3 episodes should be covering, his recovery, I guess, from that depression. I guess he can still have it there as, PTSD and trauma, but he should be working to get through that, which he's kind of doing now, I would say. But he's still struggling. He seems kind of like in the beginning. He's still dealing with that heavily. But I think this is around the time that he should actually be starting to get stronger and start, especially since he lost to Vader, he should be more determined. I guess, realistically, if he just lost, he's going to be struggling. So I don't mind with that, but I think it's about time that he starts getting back into the swing of things, but it just seems like he's doing. Also, ship-wise, it was nice to see I believe it's the T-47 snowspeeder or airspeeder that we see in Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. It was nice to see those in the episode, but I have a huge problem with that scene, as I'll talk about later. And also, as usual, the Obi-Wan and Leia relationship dynamic was always, it's always nice to see. It's good. So no complaints about that. So now, even though that was a really short list, I'm going to go into all of the bad, the mix, the things that didn't make sense, the things that weren't properly written, the nitpicks, if you understand, of course, what a nitpick is, of course. So just to start, just in general, this episode was bad. To me, it felt like a skippable episode, and it reminds me of, if you guys ever watch anime, it reminds me of a bad filler anime episode, or an episode in anime that doesn't really add on to the plot. It doesn't help the characters. It's just there to move the, I guess, just to pass time and move the plot around. That's what it kind of felt like to me. And I think that in a 6 episode miniseries, there should be no filler. It should be only, the story. There shouldn't be any space to do a filler. If they needed space, then maybe they could do something, I guess. Like kind of like a little side quest, I guess. I don't know. But for this episode, there's so much they can do with Obi-Wan, and I mean, at the same time, there's really not much you can do, which is why the question is, why is this series even existing? But that's a whole different question for another different day. But overall, just in general, this episode was really bad to me. It felt more like a bad anime episode that was filler, or just the filler episode in general. Um, because why would you waste an episode that has to do with Obi-Wan Kenobi Vader? You know, they could have put more use into different things. But another thing I just thought about was, where is the series going exactly? Because when you watch a TV show, typically you have an idea of what it's about, what it might happen. You have your theories and everything, especially with the Mandalorian. Even though we didn't know where that's going, we kind of do as an end result, but there's 20, 30 years you can work with that. But we kind of had an idea of where the show was going, right? At the Book of Boba Fett, at first we had an idea where it's going, but then it kind of took a turn, halfway, I would say early and before halfway. But we still kind of try to think about where the series is going. This series, we know where this series is going to end up. We know what happens at the end of it, which is why that leads to the question again, why are we even having this series in the first place? And what's the real purpose of this series? We can, like, I don't know anybody else who actually has an idea of where they're going next episode. Or is Obi-Wan going to take her to Alderaan again? Is he going to get caught up again? Is it going to be this thing where he's going to constantly being chased and has to keep rescuing Leia? I don't know. This is the whole Leia plot revolves around Leia is not really an ideal Obi-Wan show that I was thinking that this show would have. But that's gonna be, I don't really want to keep digging into that because there's other things I want to get into. But that's just one of the main criticisms I have for the show in general. But back to the show itself, I mean the episode itself, it suffers badly from bad writing. And an example of this, there are two nitpick examples I'm going to use. The first nitpick example is with the guy in the beginning of the episode, who's talking to Tala and Obi-Wan. At first, he wants nothing to do with the entire situation, which is understandable. Then he gives a little bit of backstory about his wife, maybe that she was a Force sensitive, or maybe she was a Jedi, and the Empire came and they took her away. Which is understandable, which is of why he does not want to get involved. But then, literally 5 seconds later, he makes up his mind, like in the blink of an eye or the snap of the finger, and then he decides to help them, or he's all of a sudden on board with the plan. And even though Star Wars does take place in a fictional universe, there should still be some type of realism that happens within the show. Because realistically, if I was in this guy's shoes, I wouldn't just 5 seconds, make my mind up. Usually, a logical person or a normal person would kind of take a step back, examine the pros and cons of what you're doing, what effect it might have on other people and yourself. Then you make your decision from there. But I understand that they have to move the plot. The plot has to keep rolling because it was kind of like a 35 minute episode, I think. I don't know, not including the credits and the recap from the beginning. But I understand that, so I'm going to let this one slide. But the next one I'm going to have to let slide too, even though I have major problems with this one. And this is the example of when Tala was going to the Inquisitor's fortress. She tries to get through, but then that's when she's stopped by the lead security officer, I guess. But then she ends up intimidating him by, saying that she's his commanding officer. He shall address her as Sir. There's also the threat to tell the Grand Inquisitor. Now, this is when my mind, so I had to actually pause the show because I think that, I'm not sure if this was told or this was explained or this was even brought up, that I think, isn't it? I don't know. I'm talking to myself here, but I could have sworn, or somebody told me that Reva told Vader that the Grand Inquisitor was killed by Obi-Wan. I don't know if this actually happened or not. I can't remember. But if this was the case, or the Grand Inquisitor is done, and he is the Grand Inquisitor, he's around the fortress, of course, then if she went into the fortress and said that she's going to report or she's going to tell the Grand Inquisitor, don't you think that the officer would have been like, hold up, the Grand Inquisitor is dead. He was killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi. The same guy that we're waiting, I guess, to get over here to rescue, this girl. These are just simple things that if you really pay attention, take a step back and use common sense to write the show, you would understand that you just seemingly killed off the Grand Inquisitor. His fortress is one of the main places that he's at. You would think that there would be not global, but it'd be widespread news that the Grand Inquisitor is dead. So you have this one officer coming in here saying that she's going to report, I guess, to the Grand Inquisitor. Reva's not the Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor is gone unless they know he's alive, which, probably going to say for episode 6, but just realistically, this is not going to happen, right? And then she goes in anyway, when realistically he should have been on his toes, and he should have just locked her up, even though that's going to be an inconvenience to the story. Well, inconveniences to the story in this case is due to stupid writing, which is another example of writing in a show which has a big issue. But I'm sure you guys get the point, so I'll let this nitpick slide as well, even though it's pretty stupid. I mean, you can easily solve this, which I'm not going to get into. Another ridiculous scene is when we see Talek give the coat to Obi-Wan, and then him and Leia are in the coat together, and then they're walking past hundreds of Imperials, like droids, stormtroopers, purge troopers, officers. You get the point. They're walking, and it's not like anybody doesn't see Leia's 2 feet. If you pause the scene, you can see Leia's 2 feet right there. You can see her through the coat, bro. Like, what's going? Like, there's no. Come on, like, let's be smart. Like, is this really a smart choice? They could have kind of did the thing with like Fallen Order, where they have to get back to the ship or something. But more on that Fallen Order stuff later, and the Purge Troopers later, which I'm going to touch on. And then speaking of Purge Troopers, Inquisitors, they didn't do anything, right? And this was disappointing because I was hoping for maybe an Obi-Wan versus the Inquisitors, or maybe a duel Reva this episode, or maybe Obi-Wan versus the Purge Troopers, because they have weapons that go against lightsabers. They can duel with lightsabers, as we see in Fallen Order. And we kind of see in episode 3, of course, in Clone Wars, the Magna Guards that have the electro staffs. I think that's what they're called. I think the Purge Troopers use the same thing. But anyway, kind of a complete waste of an action sequence that they could have had. I'm all about the action sometimes, but there has to be some type of spectacle when going into Star Wars. But they wasted the Inquisitors this episode. They wasted the Purge Troopers this episode. Then, they and along with that, they actually had the T-47s, which is another nitpick I have. The T-47s, they come in and they attack the base, but there's no TIE fighters that are, at least trying to attack them back or trying to defend the fortress. There are no Star Destroyers in the sky. There are nobody's. I mean, this is a heavily guarded place. You would think that there would be TIE fighters surrounding it, making sure that it can't be attacked or it can't be destroyed. Because usually in Star Wars, when you have an Imperial base, they have to shut down the sensors. They have to shut down the scanners. That way the ship can come in, and then they can do what the ship needs to do. But even then, there's Star Destroyers in the sky. There's all these things that happen in the Star Wars universe. And maybe it's just the budget. Maybe it's because of time. But this is the thing. These are certain things that you can't just try to ignore, these things that are already established in Star Wars that, you need to get done for the plot. You can't just not include them in there. But maybe it's because some things behind the scenes that are going on, I guess. But these are just simple things that you have just due to bad writing or just bad things in general. And also, the whole escape thing with Leia kind of felt like a watered down version of Jedi Fallen Order's ending. I mean, Vader was there. I mean, Vader ends up showing up later. That's fine if he shows up later, because he can't be everywhere. That Obi-Wan is, of course. But it kind of felt like a watered down version of Fallen Order. The ending of it, which I thought was pretty lame, especially because they didn't use the Purge Troopers. They didn't use the Inquisitors. Obi-Wan, they were surrounded, but Obi-Wan took out some stormtroopers and droids and everything, which was cool, but why not replace those stormtroopers with some Purge Troopers? That way he can actually, I guess, start trying to get back in shape to duel Vader, as we know he will, in the end of the series, as we know. But these are just all nitpicks for this one part of this episode. And another thing I saw that I just reminded myself, because I had to re-record this video, was the whole Reva saying to Leia, Obi-Wan's not coming to save you. And then I had to pause the episode again, because throughout the series, I'm pretty sure that Leia doesn't know that Ben is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the reason for this is, if you're not following, in episode 4, you get the whole "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," right? But probably Bail Organa. I don't know if, we know that Leia in episode 4 knows that Obi-Wan Kenobi served alongside her father, probably Anakin Skywalker, of course we know. But Leia at this time doesn't know Obi-Wan is Obi-Wan Kenobi. She only knows him as basically Ben the Jedi. She doesn't know that they're two people. So they created a plot hole, which was kind of solved by her knowing that he's Ben, or he's been going by Ben. They just collapsed it. They just, kind of like took a dump on their own work, because their whole thing is to not deconstruct canon, right? But they just did it, probably without knowing. But this is the simple things that you should keep in mind. And I know I'm rambling. This isn't, on the script. Um, but this is just, we were seeing, some things, but this kind of contradicts what we know, because then if she knows that Obi-Wan is Ben Kenobi instead of Ben the Jedi, right? Then, even though, Star Wars original film was written, or we know it was made in 1977, then, instead of saying, I know you helped me years ago when I was little, you help me again. If you understand what I'm trying to say, but I'm rambling right now, so I'm not really going by a script. But they kind of block themselves into a hole when they try to. Their goal is to not deconstruct canon, not interfere with canon. They're trying to find loopholes, but then they end up creating more loopholes in the show. But as usual, that's due to bad writing, and that's because I don't know how long they took to. They've been working years on just an Obi-Wan project, but this is something that should be taken very seriously, and it seems that they're not, because the writing is mediocre at times. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's mediocre, as we see throughout the series. But just in conclusion, that's the end of my rambling. That this was not a great episode. This is the worst episode in this entire series. It was kind of felt like a bad filler episode. Little to no effect on the plot. The writing was bad, to say the least. But these were just my thoughts and my rambles, as you guys heard or you watched. So comment below, let me know what you guys thought of the episode, or just comment in general if you have something to say. And that's pretty much it that I have for you guys today. So, again, thanks for watching as usual. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, or whenever you're seeing this, or watching or hearing this or listening to this. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.